Oh, are you going on a trip with all that luggage?
No, I'm going back to my parents' house.
What?
Emma blinked in surprise, clearly not processing what I had just said. Thanks for all the help with the chores and the snide remarks. I hope you and Tom have a happy life together.
Wait.
Ignoring Emma's attempt to stop me, I walked out the door. Dragging my heavy suitcase behind me, I boarded a bus heading to my parents' place. My name is Sarah. I got married to my husband, Tom, 4 years ago, and now we're renting an apartment where we live together. The apartment we're renting is a fairly high-end place with a rent of $5,000 a month, something we couldn't afford on Tom's income alone. If you ask how we can live in such a luxurious place, the answer is simple: it's thanks to my workload and salary. It's a bit embarrassing to say this myself, but I'm a career woman working in sales at a large company, giving it my all from morning till night. Early mornings and overtime are a given, and I sacrifice my personal life to stay at the top of the sales rankings. This apartment is where I started living because I wanted to enjoy a little luxury at home, even if it's just during the limited time I'm there. However, my luxurious and peaceful days are starting to slip away. The reason for that is the presence of Tom's mother, Emma, who recently started staying with us. Since my job keeps me busy, I sometimes ask Tom to help with the housework, but instead of doing it himself, he just calls his mother, Emma, and dumps all the chores on her. And Emma, being Emma, comes running whenever he calls and ends up doing all the housework, so Tom never improves his skills. What started as her coming over twice a week has now turned into her practically living with us. If all she did was help with the chores, I wouldn't complain and might even be grateful. But what's driving me crazy is Emma's over-involvement.
Sarah, why haven't you quit your job yet?
Because Tom doesn't earn enough, that's why. I'm sorry. I want to say that, but I can't bring myself to, so I just offer a half-hearted apology instead. On top of that, she started nagging me because I haven't gotten pregnant yet.
A woman only becomes a good wife when she has children early on.
Of course, I can't tell her that Tom isn't exactly helping with that. These outdated and intrusive comments are something I have to endure after a long day at work. To make matters worse, she criticizes how I fold clothes and insists that using the dishwasher is bad. Naturally, I haven't just been sitting quietly and taking it. I've talked to Tom about it, but he never takes me seriously. At first, he listens attentively, but in the end, he always sides with Emma. Even when I finally had enough and told them that Emma should either start paying rent or move out, Tom sided with her and decided to let her stay rent-free. And so, the paradise I earned with my salary is gradually being taken over by Emma. One day, after talking with my parents on the phone, I started planning a small party and inviting them over to our place. It seemed like I might be able to take some time off around my mom's birthday, and my parents had mentioned wanting to see the apartment where I live, so it felt like a perfect opportunity. Excited, I began planning and called out to Tom, who was lying on the couch, scrolling through his phone. "Hey, I'm thinking of inviting my parents over in a month. Do you want to join us?" Tom has only met my parents once, during our wedding meeting, and they've had little interaction since then. I was hoping that if everything worked out, maybe Emma could join us too, and we could have a nice, pleasant dinner together.
What? Your poor parents don't belong in a place like this.
Hey, how can you say something like that? I couldn't help but raise my voice at Tom's harsh words. Tom put down his phone, covered his ears, and shot me a sharp glare.
Well, it's true, isn't it? Even when we went to meet them for the wedding, they were wearing cheap clothes.
I clenched my fists, trying to suppress the anger rising within me. I thought I was used to being criticized, but I realized I couldn't tolerate my parents being insulted. The anger bubbled up, and I had to hold back to avoid yelling at Tom. I don't want to say this, but I started quietly, trying to control my anger. Your mom isn't that different from mine. What makes you think my parents are poor? Are your parents some big shot CEOs or something? Of course, they aren't. Tom's dad is an office worker, and Emma is a housewife, a completely ordinary family. But it seemed like my words hit a nerve with Tom, and he scowled in annoyance.
At least my parents make more money than yours. Your family had to take out student loans just so you could go to college.
Tom said, puffing out his chest with pride. I took out those loans because I wanted to go to college on my own without relying on my parents. I wanted to tell him that he was just mooching off his parents, but I swallowed my words. Getting into a fight here wouldn't do any good. All I want is to invite my parents over to the apartment. It's not like I'm asking them to live with us forever. I'm just asking if they can come over for one day. No, just half a day.
I already said no. If you can't accept that, then move out of this apartment.
What? How did this turn into a move out?
I don't need anyone who won't listen to me. I don't want to live with you.
When Tom spat those words out with such disdain, something inside me snapped. Fine. If that's how you feel, I'll move out. But if I do, I'm not paying the rent here anymore. Can you really afford to live here on your income alone?
So that's what this is about, money. Well, let me tell you, my mom may be a housewife, but she has a big income. Covering the $5,000 rent is no problem.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Tom planned to rely on Emma's income to get by. My anger turned to sheer disbelief. I just couldn't wrap my head around how Tom could be so dependent on others. Why did I ever marry this man? I never imagined there would come a day when I couldn't trust my own judgment about the man I chose. I tossed aside the planner I had been writing in and pulled a suitcase out of the closet. The closet was overflowing with Emma's belongings, which had gradually taken over, pushing my things to the back. Tom looked a bit flustered as he watched me calmly pack, but he didn't say anything in the end. After gathering all the essentials, I headed toward the front door without a word to Tom, only to run into Emma, who had just returned from shopping.
Oh, are you going on a trip with all that luggage?
No, I'm going back to my parents' house.
What?
Emma blinked in surprise, clearly not processing what I had just said. Thanks for all the help with the chores and the snide remarks. I hope you and Tom have a happy life together.
Wait, Sarah.
Ignoring Emma's attempt to stop me, I walked out the door. Dragging my heavy suitcase behind me, I boarded a bus heading to my parents' place. When I told my parents the whole story, they burst out laughing. Their laughter, as if to say I was being petty, made me feel a bit annoyed. Hey, this isn't something to laugh about.
Sorry. Really, Sarah, you're something else. Getting that angry just because someone said something about your parents.
Maybe it was a case of tit for tat.
Even my mother, who rarely laughs out loud, was covering her mouth and shaking with silent laughter.
Well, don't worry. One day, Tom will probably invite me over to see the apartment.
Dad, what are you talking about? There's no way Tom's letting you into that place. I looked at my dad suspiciously, but he just kept laughing with my mom, never revealing what he really meant. Eventually, work got so busy that I completely forgot about Tom and the apartment. I was still living with my parents, seeing them every day, but since that day, the subject of the apartment never came up. It had been 6 months since Tom kicked me out of the apartment. Exhausted from early mornings and overtime every day, I had fallen into a lazy routine of sleeping in until noon on my days off. Then, out of the blue, my parents spoke up.
So, you're finally awake. We're thinking of going to visit the apartment where Tom is living. Would you like to come along?
My groggy mind couldn't quite grasp what my dad was saying, so I tilted my head in confusion. My mom, impatient with my dazed reaction, started pushing me from behind.
Come on, get dressed and wear something really nice.
Following my mom's urging, I put on a dress I'd never worn before. It was a birthday gift from my parents, a high-end designer piece that was so expensive I never felt comfortable wearing it casually. Looking closer, I realized both my mom and dad were also dressed in high-end designer clothes, the kind they wouldn't normally wear. It was almost like they were trying to flaunt their wealth. Before I knew it, I found myself at the apartment where I used to live with Tom. I fully expected to be turned away at the entrance, unable to get past the security gate, but my worries were unfounded. The person we were looking for was standing there, stunned, right in the entrance. Tom and Emma were surrounded by a mountain of luggage, just standing there in shock. When Tom spotted me, his face twisted into an awkward expression.
Hey, Sarah. What's going on? We've been kicked out of our apartment.
Kicked out? Were you actually paying the rent? I thought it was a perfectly reasonable question, but Tom looked away, embarrassed.
Yeah, we paid it. Even had to take out loans to do it.
I was stunned by Tom's response. So, the claim that Emma had some big income was a lie after all. I couldn't believe that they kept up appearances and went into debt just to keep living in that luxury apartment. If it were me, I would have moved out long ago. Then why were you kicked out? Did you cause some kind of trouble? Tom shook his head, clearly clueless. Emma, who had been listening silently, also seemed to have no idea and was staring at the luggage in the entrance, looking embarrassed. The tension was broken by the sound of my father's laughter. His hearty laugh echoed through the entrance. My mom, too, was laughing softly, covering her mouth with her hand. What's going on, Dad?
Sorry, I just couldn't help it. It's so amusing. Tom, I'm giving the apartment you were living in to Sarah. If she doesn't want a used one, we can arrange for a new place.
What? What are you talking about?
Tom spoke up before I could. Emma, like me, was lost and glanced around in confusion.
Didn't you know? For the past 3 months, this apartment building has been owned by our company.
Tom's eyes widened as he stared at my father. My parents are the company's CEOs. When I added that, Emma's mouth dropped open in disbelief. It's no wonder. I never told Tom that my father is the CEO of a real estate company. And to add to that, my mother is the CEO of a subsidiary under my father's company. Both of them are highly successful CEOs. I seem to have inherited their business acumen, as I've always excelled in sales. Tom mistakenly assumed my family was poor based on the clothes we wore during the wedding meeting and the fact that I had taken out student loans for college, but he couldn't have been more wrong. Tom's anger quickly turned toward me.
Why didn't you tell me? If I had known your dad was a CEO,
And what if you had known? Just so you know, I wasn't living here with any help from my parents. I'm not like you, who's been relying on Emma this whole time. Surprisingly, it wasn't Tom but Emma who accepted the reality faster. Maybe she instantly recognized the hierarchy when she saw my mom's high-end clothes. She started speaking with a look that suggested she was trying to gauge my parents' mood.
Well, you see, when Tom insisted we move here, I sold my house. Now that we've been kicked out, I have nowhere to live.
Emma glanced at my parents, but neither of them lost their smiles. However, as their daughter, I could tell their eyes were not smiling at all, which was terrifying. My mom gave Emma a gentle smile, trying to put her at ease, and then spoke in a polite tone.
You're more than 3 months behind on rent, aren't you? We've sent notices and called multiple times. Since we received no response, we had no choice but to proceed with the eviction.
So you really did miss the payments?
When Emma looked at Tom, he immediately averted his gaze. It seemed they managed to pay only the first 3 months by taking on debt. Emma couldn't pay the rent either, and now she was looking uncomfortable under my mom's questioning.
Can't you do something about this? Please, you're the CEOs, aren't you?
Emma desperately pleaded with my parents. But my father coldly dismissed her.
As the CEO, I'm the one who decided on the eviction. You'll need to follow through with it.
Expecting to live well without paying rent is a bit too much, don't you think?
With my parents backing her into a corner, Emma turned to Tom for help. But Tom didn't move an inch. He just stood there, as if he didn't want to be involved, practically abandoning Emma. That indifferent attitude made my anger flare up again. I've been thinking over the past 6 months, and I've realized that I can't continue with Tom. Let's get a divorce.
What? Wait, a divorce?
I glared at Tom, who was now panicking. I can't live with someone who insults my parents. As I boldly spoke those words, my parents looked at me with a proud, almost admiring expression.
But what am I supposed to do now?
Tom collapsed to his knees, looking utterly defeated. As much as I wanted to keep watching that pathetic sight, I wasn't cruel enough to leave it at that. Well, first off, you need to figure out how to pay the back rent. Why not sell all this stuff? You don't have anywhere to take it anyway. I glanced at the piles of belongings scattered around the entrance. Despite being behind on rent, they had plenty of expensive items, like brand name clothes and watches. Selling them could at least help a little. Feeling a bit bad about leaving them completely stranded, I started sorting through the belongings piled on the floor.
The truck should be here soon. Let's take everything to our warehouse for now.
My father joined in, helping me sort through the items. As Tom and Emma sat there, unable to do anything, the once cluttered entrance quickly cleared out, leaving only the expensive clothes, jewelry, and watches behind.
Why don't you stop by our shop later? We also buy watches and jewelry.
My mom flashed a business smile and handed Emma her business card. It was a remarkably smooth move. Even after kicking them out of the apartment, my parents didn't miss the chance to promote their business. I doubt I'll ever be able to catch up to them. I'm still not as ruthless as they are when it comes to cutting people off for the sake of business. As I gazed absent-mindedly at my parents, my father spoke in a calm voice.
People who judge others by their appearance and call them poor don't belong in this apartment.
With those words, I knew for sure. My parents had also taken offense at what Tom had said. Tom had been so desperate to pay the rent that he kept borrowing money from everywhere he could. Not only from loan sharks, but even from his colleagues and superiors at work. It eventually became a topic of conversation at his company that he never paid them back. Tom lost his standing at work, managed to pay off the debts to his colleagues, and was forced to resign. Emma, who had been living with him and trying to enjoy the perks, was just as guilty. After being kicked out of the apartment, Emma moved into an employee dorm with Tom and started working as a temp at a factory. Ironically, that factory is part of my father's company's group. Though they don't have debt collectors showing up at the dorm, they're afraid to go out for fear of being approached, so Tom and Emma are stuck in a monotonous routine of work. A month after Tom was evicted, our divorce was finalized. My parents gifted me one of the apartments as an early inheritance, and I've been living comfortably ever since. Work is still busy, but my sales skills were recognized, and I'm about to get a promotion. Now that I'm single, I plan to focus even more on my career.